Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome to episode 3 of the High Spirit building series. We're back to this. Last episode we made a nice icy surrounding to set the tone for this level. I think it looks pretty good. I do need to make a couple of tweaks towards the end of it, such as ground spikes in the end, a transition out, and I also need to tweak the ground. So the first thing I want to try with the ground is deleting both of these triggers, setting the ground to white initially, and then setting the line to black blending, which is invisible. Hey, that looks a lot better, I think. Maybe not on the transition out, but I need to tweak that anyway. I'm setting up a few glow pieces to go on the gameplay borders. These are both to go on B2 and group 19. 19 needs to be initially set off like that. Then it's going to fade on as you go into the ball part like so, for about a 2-second fade in, maybe a little bit after the ball portal, just so the screen can adjust. In fact, to make things more clear, I've reduced the opacity of them to about 30%, just so it doesn't really get in the way. It just adds a blue tint to the top and bottom. That looks okay, I think. Right now, as you can see, I've placed 2 gradient pieces. They're on B3, so they cover all of the blocks and stuff in this part. They don't cover the orbs. Okay, so I'm going to have to rethink this layer. It's going to have to be on B1 and I think 13. It should also be on group 20. The top gradient will be on 21 and the bottom gradient will be on 22. So they're all going to move as this blue orb is hit. So group 20 locks to the X forever. Then 21 needs to move down about 70 blocks. I'm going to say for 3 seconds on an ease in out easing. 22 needs to move up 70 and we should get a nice exit transition. I think it needs more time on it though. That's too much. Man. Boom. I think that's just about right, and then I can put the new visual on screen as the dash orb is hit. While it was fun to experiment with the ground being white, I think for this transition it's going to be best if I have it on black. If I do this, I can build layers into this transition by taking the regular blocks, copy pasting, moving them up an editor layer, putting it on T3, and then moving each of them down by 2, and then putting them all on black. Just so that when the white screen comes up, there's also going to be a slight ground movement, which is going to build in the next part pretty appropriately, I think. So right now, just like that. Nice. In fact, I'm going to try moving these black layers 1 block closer to the center either side, just so that when the screen closes, it closes entirely instead of leaving a white patch in the middle. I think that's going to be cleaner overall, to be honest. Yeah, I feel like that contradicts the whole level so far, which is perfect because this part I want to be quite cave themed and closed in, unlike the first part. I feel like for this part I've really got to exaggerate the difference. So at this point I can select the entire level, add it to group 23, and put an alpha trigger right here that just turns the whole thing off. But then I also need to remember to go back to this layer, the black closing layer, take 23 off because that is quite important for the transition to go ahead. Same for the gameplay as well, that needs to be taken off of 23. So then at this point I can hide the player, and then the next block I can toggle those overlays which are on 20. Before that I need to turn the background to black, just like so. Instead of toggling 20 like that, I could just use an alpha trigger instead. That way it's a lot smoother when it fades away. 2 more things I want to keep. The blending overlay, I'll take that off 23. And also the low opacity black overlay. And I can set the opacities right now. So I want group 8, the low opacity overlay, to be on 30%. And I want group 7, the white blending overlay, to be set to nothing. So this is the way that we're moving out of this ball part. The transition comes on. You reach the cube portal, and then boom, the level fades back on. The only thing I forgot to do is remove that hide player trigger. We don't need it. I don't know why I even thought of that. I'm going to make a few changes as well, removing all of these support platforms. I want the S block to stop right here. I guess I was using the hide player trigger because I wasn't expecting to have a fade out, but now that I do have a fade out, I can have the player visible. I can have a nice long transition like this with the dash orb visible, which is nice. I'm going to change the color of the blending screen to a blue color, 0 seconds, right at the same time as it changes the opacity and stuff. Then after, I'm going to fade it on to about 40%, something like that. That's a very brief guess. I'll tell you what, I think I've absolutely nailed the color of this. So we'll keep this value in mind, change the value to 0.2, and then we need to align the edge of this duration line with that big portal. Then same again, we've aligned the duration line with the pad. It's going to full opacity this time. Then we need to make a big fade like 2.5 back down to that 40%, just to really bring in this part. So it should start off black, fade slowly to a low opacity, then go to blue like that. Awesome. Once again, we need to make bases for the blocks, which are just using the very plain object. You'll notice that I've included blocks in the transition before the ship as well. I don't know how that's going to work yet. This could still be invisible, but I want to do it just in case I want to factor it into this part. So apart from this big one, a lot of my structures are going in tiny little boxes. As I mentioned in the first episode, I want to really make this cave feeling strong by enclosing the gameplay with lots of slopes with spikes on them. Alright, so this ship section plays a little bit differently now because I've factored in slopes to the gameplay. I think it flows a bit better. It's nerfed a small bit, but it feels very natural to play, which it didn't at first. Like, you see how naturally this green line goes through? Apart from here, the deal is here that the ground spikes are taken off so you can land there. It's kind of incorporating the ground spikes into the actual gameplay, which I think is interesting. I've had a bright idea for the structuring in this level. All of the objects within the ground spikes are on B3 -2 on half opacity. Then above that, on B3 -1 full opacity, we've got the ground spikes and stuff. All of these objects are on color channel 1, which is white, but they go underneath the low opacity black screen that we added to 30% earlier, which makes them tinted by the blending screen overlay. At the big transition, I changed the color channel 1 to a low gray, and then there's a couple of pulses on the beat of the song that kind of make it a little bit lighter. I thought the white was too outlandish with that saturation of blue. I think this is going to work a lot better. Before I set all of my default objects to invisible, I want to format the spikes first, something similar to the ground spikes. Yo, it looks nice right now. The atmosphere is strong. Once I get my overlays set in and I get my tricks out of my sleeve, this is going to be popping. I've got some big plans to spice up this part and make it more interesting and also tie it in to the rest of the level. So for an effect, I need to cover all of the space that is not covered by these ground slopes. But I've realized this is going to be quite difficult because some of them are half spaced. As you can see, the pinnacle is in between two blocks. So as you can see, it hasn't really made much of a difference until you scroll over to this point and you get these little rectangle shaped pieces which I need to fill with mini blocks with the same values. This is all going on B4 -1, so right behind everything, and it's also going to be black. So right now, you won't really see much of a difference because the background is black anyway, but once this changes color, I will be swapping the colors of the ground spikes and the background to make an inversion effect. And I think this pulse right here is going to make it fit in properly if I swap them on those beats. On top of these blocks, I want to add a vignette, so I need to keep B3 and -1 in mind. Anything above that will display on top. There's a black screen overlay that's on B3 and 1, so B3 and 2 will do. Just by doing this staircase like this, I can layer up some glow. I'm going to make a new color channel 4, and this is going to be on about 25% opacity. Then this glow piece on the very bottom can just be set to regular black to tie into the ground. So I've got this on the top and bottom. It's on group 24, so right with the ship portal, I'm going to lock that to the x-axis like so. There we go. By using white strips like that on the side of the screen, we can tell where the edges need to be. So for the sides of the vignette, I can copy one side of the layer 5 overlay, scale up to 2, put it on editor layer 6, something very high on the Z order so it lies above. I've replaced the borders now, and I can delete the space that is dead, that is not making it onto the screen like that, to save objects. Since the ship part will have cracks on the top and bottom like this, I need to initially have this turned off, so group 24 can be 0 opacity way before this goes on screen, and then it can fade on slowly at this point for about 2 seconds to full. A long fade time is important here, so you can't tell that it's fading onto the screen. It just kind of subtly creeps up on you. I like that. This is good atmosphere at the moment. I do want to get rid of those pesky ship particles though, and that's very simple to do. All you got to do is place a background effect off trigger, and when I play a normal mode now, there will be no particles on screen. It's looking nice and clean at the moment. So I've got myself in a sticky situation since I'm using a color channel on the pulse. Oh, so instead of 1 pulsing all the time, this needs to swap between 9 and 1, 9 and 1. Color 9 gets set to grey, so the white pulse affects it properly. And color 1 gets set to black as normal, and this is all on a 0.05, so the pulse trigger doesn't have any seams with it. So when I've copy pasted this now, I need to swap these pulse triggers back over so this pulse works properly once again. And this is what we're looking at the moment. a big inverting pulse like that, and it flips back to normal on that yellow portal. Using select filter, I need to fix the issues with the overlaying black glow that I was talking about tying to the top and bottom of the screen. These objects are on color channel 9, whereas the rest of it is on color channel 4, and I haven't really thought about this with the pulse. So now these objects that should overlay the rest on color channel 9 are a much higher Z order than they were. Now the reason that these low opacity objects aren't pulsing is because I want to keep that darkness in. If I made it all go to grey, it would look way too washed out. So I like the way it is. What if I change these color channel 9 pulses to a color channel 4 pulse instead? It's more inclusive, but it washes it out again, which just isn't what I want, and the contrast there is so much. Nah, it's staying on color channel 9. When the drums kick in this part, I've included some alpha triggers that just change the opacity of the blending screen on a 0.1 fade time. So it goes to 0.8, and it goes to 0.2, and it goes to 0.1 again. It kinda works. I don't know. This part is feeling really awkward at the moment. I want to bring back these hexagon blocks for a little bit of detail here and there, scaled up to 2 on color channel 6, so it's not on 1 and it doesn't get pulsed to the same as what these objects are. I'm going to put it on 16, which is quarter opacity, just so it nicely sits on top of the ground spikes like that. Then I can do some magic with half spacing and spacing with steps like this to make a nice little hexagon pattern that cuts off into the ground. I don't know, I think it's just going to be something cool to fill in the space a bit better. Hey! That looks cool, doesn't it? And it fits in with both sides of the inversion. Awesome. I'm also going to route them into place with a couple of ground spikes, some of them scaled up, some of them with different opacities. These spikes are on color channel 9 and they're just overlaying that area where the hexagons cover with the ground. Now I'm making a slope object to go underneath these and above this background, just to slot in quite nicely on group 15, which is half opacity. This is also going to be on white. Oh, it's not on the right layering. Just make sure it's on B4 and something positive. There we go. I think that fits in pretty well, honestly. See, the thing is, it doesn't look good overlapping other objects because this object has its own light difference to worry about. You see how it gets lighter towards the outside? Well, that's kind of ruined when it overlaps with the blocks. Right now, I'm just spacing out some classic T3 slope objects that are going to go above everything and just sit on the top and bottom of the screen like this. I think it's quite interesting to place some of the focus in color on the top and bottom of the screen and have the inside darker. I don't know, I'm trying to exaggerate this change in the level as much as possible, from happy and open in the beginning to dark and gloomy and lost in the middle. I've added some blue glow around the portals. It's the same color as the blending screen, looks pretty good when it's turned up high in saturation. So I've perfectly flown through here as the ship, and I'm going to place some little glow pieces that pulse on and off as you pass them. So you get one dot set up on group 27, and this is just going to fade on to a blue for 0.2 seconds and one off. Then you have them both selected and you just feed it through along with the green line every couple of blocks and just build helper this over and over again so you get a whole host of pieces of blue glue. Group 53 already, oh my god. And boom, now you get a little trail of glow to follow. Nice, I like this. Maybe I should reduce the fade time a little bit because there's a lot of them on screen at once. But look at this wiggly line of pulse triggers. This will follow the exact pattern that the glow pieces have since I copied them all together and build help with them and stuff. I didn't place the pulse triggers separately. Alright, to end the episode, I've fixed the way the colors are distributed on screen right now. Objects like the hexagons and the white slopes on the bottom were all set to color channel 6, which wasn't pulsing between black and white, and it was just making them stand out really awkwardly on one specific side. So now they've been changed to black, which is the opposite of the block that they're currently standing on. You can really see the difference in normal mode right now. It looks a lot more refined, it looks a lot more polished. The colors just fit with each other a lot more. The contrast is nicer. I'm glad that there's not any details that just stand out too much. They all just kind of blend together and fit well, without there really being a background effect to really tie in this blue and grey mix that I've went for. But yeah, thank you for watching this building episode. Check out the join button next to the subscribe button. Check the links in the description. You find my Twitter, Twitch, Instagram and Discord server. Leave a like and subscribe and have a good day.